Welcome. I'm so happy you're joining me for this fully staffed segment on inclusion. In the last few years, the business sector has opened its eyes to the urgent need for diversity, equity, inclusion, or DEI, as it's commonly called. And as new generations come into the workforce, they are demanding more from all of us as employers, especially in terms of social justice. In September 2022, in fact, Glassdoor and Indeed conducted a survey to learn which issues are most important to people working in the US. And they reported that younger workers are pushing the importance of DEI, and that is a top trend that is expected to stay and stick around. And that's a good thing. And their study actually revealed that 62% of US employees would consider turning down a job or leaving a company if they did not think that their manager supported DEI initiatives. For 18 to 34-year-olds, in particular, that number jumps even higher to 72% of them would leave their job or their employer if their manager did not support DEI initiatives. That is a clear message, if I've ever heard one, that we cannot just do things the way they've always been done. So I want to be transparent here. You know me, I'm always telling you the truth. I am not an expert in this field. I am not a DEI specialist. In fact, when clients come to us and want to do work around diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, I refer them out to other consultants. Here's the thing though, I am a culture expert. And this segment is going to really address how to make your culture more inclusive. Because when it comes down to it, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, all of that is a culture of those values. Too often, focus is placed on diversity, and that's limited to very often improving hiring practices, which falls primarily under the umbrella of human resources. And by the way, I really encourage you to connect with the specialists as needed to support you and your organization in any efforts regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. But in contrast to just diversity, an emphasis on inclusion alongside diversity opens up possibilities for everyone to play a part in the organization. So with inclusive decision-making, and we're going to talk a lot about that this month, with inclusive decision-making, there are immediate opportunities to tap into diverse perspectives of the staff that you already have in place. Forget about the people that you need to hire, but the staff that you already have in place. So changing the demographic makeup of an organization might take you some time, but the good news is inclusion can start now, today. You do not have to wait to hire anybody else. So first off, let's talk about sort of all these nuances around terminology. And yes, my friend, it is time to dust off the Webster's Dictionary. Remember that? Had the Webster's Dictionary along with your Funk and Wagnalls encyclopedias on the shelf? Well, diversity refers to the demographic mix of people. Diversity is just a head count, really. And of course, representation is a fundamental need in any organization. But, and I want you to listen to this closely because it's important, you can have a diverse organization that is not equitable or inclusive. Let me repeat that. You can have a diverse organization that is neither equitable or inclusive. It happens all the time. Just because people are present in the organization does not mean that they have an equal voice. Maybe you've experienced this even yourself. The next definition, equity. Equity is providing equal possible outcomes for everyone because, let's face it, barriers can prevent success despite a person's merit and despite their best efforts. And inclusion is a behavior that results in the emotion of belonging. It's being in an atmosphere in which all employees can come to work and feel valued and comfortable and confident in themselves. They can feel safe to contribute their unique perspective. In other words, inclusion is all about, drum roll please. I'm a really bad drum roller. It's all about culture. Think of it like this. Diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. And by the way, I wish I could take credit for that great analogy, but it's actually from an activist named Verna Myers. So who wants to go to a party and not dance? Maybe you do. But me, I want to be dancing. And diversity means nothing without inclusion. So you might have heard me talk in some of the past videos about Brené Brown. And she's an author and a researcher who specializes in studying vulnerability. And I'd really suggest checking out some of her TED Talks when you have a few minutes. You're going to be hooked, I promise you. Anyway, for her book, Braving the Wilderness, that Brené Brown, she studied people who seem to have a sense of belonging to see what set them apart. And here's how she defines belonging based on all the research that she's done. Belonging is the innate human desire to be part of something larger than us. Because this yearning is so primal, we often try to acquire it by fitting in and by seeking approval, which are not only hollow substitutes for belonging, but often barriers to it. Because true belonging only happens when we present our authentic, imperfect selves to the world. Our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. True belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are. Think about that statement. Belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are. Given that definition, and it probably just kind of like me, I read that, I was like, wow, right? It probably really hit you. And it's obvious to most of us that supporting diversity and inclusion in your organization is simply the right thing to do, isn't it? But if you're one of the people that also likes to hear the business case behind everything, I do, I'm a data nerd, there's overwhelming evidence that an inclusive culture also leads to more success in the organization. In fact, there's a book that was written in 2016 called Which Two Heads Are Better Than One? And in it, Juliet Burke, who's the author, reported that organizations with inclusive cultures, now listen to some of these stats, organizations with inclusive cultures are 2 times as likely to exceed financial goals, 3 times as likely to be higher performing, 6 times more likely to be innovative, and 8 times, that's 800% more likely to achieve better outcomes. Dang, how's that for a business case? So the impacts on business are tremendous, but really those are just side effects of the real benefits of inclusion. And it may come as no surprise to you that leaders who believe in inclusion make all the difference. And according to Deloitte, the actions of leaders can swing an employee's perception of inclusion by 70%. 70%. But if it's left up to individual leaders to interpret what an inclusive culture is, well, you might get a ton of different answers. And we have learned throughout Fully Staffed that in order to create accountability in an organization, you have to be crystal clear on expectations. So if you want an inclusive culture, you have to be crystal clear on what that means. So you can hold yourself accountable and other leaders, you can help hold each other accountable to it too. And in fact, management consulting firm Deloitte proposed a 4-point inclusion model that provides clarity that you can use in your organization. So I want you to sharpen your pencils or loosen up those typing fingers, because I want you to get ready to take some notes, unless you're driving. If you're driving while you're listening to this, please don't take notes. Just listen up real good. So first, People must feel a sense of fairness and respect in the workplace. Basic consideration for others must be evident in the organization, and favoritism, no surprise, spells disaster. So I encourage you to go back and take a look at content for fairness and for respect in the fully staffed archive. You can go back and look at those at any time, and that will give you a wealth of information on how to bring those two values to life in your team. Next, commitment to valuing people and fostering a sense of belonging are key. In order to attain a sense of belonging, we as human beings need to feel safe. It has to be okay for us to be our authentic selves and to speak up without embarrassment or retaliation. So that is the third one, which is feel safe. Fourth, and the final element is ensuring staff feel empowered to grow and contribute, even to be involved in decision making when it makes sense for the team and the organization. And by the way, it pretty much always makes sense. And unless you're evacuating because of a fire and need to get out quickly, we're going to talk about that in some later videos. But first, I want to explore some of these points and really kind of dive into them. And I want you to do that through your first 10-minute mastery of the month. And that is to schedule a conversation with your team. That's all you need to do right now. Schedule a conversation with team, get it on the calendar. And when that date occurs, discuss what inclusion means for the team. One of the ways I love to ask questions about what people want is to have them vision in the future. It's easy. If you just say, what does inclusion mean to you? It's hard for them to answer. So I ask it in this way. And this, by the way, is on your handouts on the 10-minute mastery. 1 year from now, we did a survey and people said our organization or our team was inclusive. What would be different then compared to now? And when you ask it in that way, somehow people just open up and the ideas flow. And then later on, you can kind of ask about what specific behaviors you want to agree upon and so forth. But start with that simple question about them describing the future state of inclusion. And I cannot wait to hear some of your ideas. Please do share them in our Facebook group. You can pop me an email and tell me what your team came up with. I'd love to hear your feedback and so appreciate it when you send it to me. So join me on the second video, and we're going to talk about the sting of exclusion. Ooh, sounds deep, right? I'll see you over there.